realize, we find ourselves in conflicts or disputes that the underlying factors and threats lie in our personal identities. Identity is essentially group membership, and we all have multiple memberships and allegiance and inclusion to different groups, whether these are ethnic, religious, or whether they are other types of groups, as you can see on the slide, whether we're talking about gender, whether we're talking about experience-oriented groups, so being connected with other individuals within a community that shares an experience, or whether we are talking about sharing an interest or sharing a value. Some identities or some group memberships are assigned to us, such as race, and others can be chosen along the way, such as ideology or values or experiences. There's a broad category of identities that can coexist for every individual, but the question is to what extent we prioritize one identity over the other. Interestingly, we excuse me, we would prioritize the identities that we seem to find to be more important. But another interesting factor that allows us to prioritize one identity over another is the fact that one identity might be under threat. I don't know if we can move to the next slide. When we look at our identities and our memberships to different identity groups, some of these groups might be perceivably, we might think that they are under threat, or we might assume that they are under threat. Whether this is a systemic threat, such as the violation of specific human rights for certain social groups, or whether it's something more abstract or intangible, such as the question whether the statement from another individual is threatening or hostile, or whether it's not, so something that's more subjective. And a way to differentiate between identities that are under threat and those that are not is to see them as three categories: the non-politicized identities, where there's no threat; the politicized identities, where there's no imminent threat; and identities facing securitized issues, where not only us as individuals, but other members of this shared identity community understand that there is a severe or imminent threat against that identity, with examples of violent conflict that is targeted against certain nationalities or certain ethnicities, any policies that target specific races or ethnic groups, or even religions. But we can also look at systemic human rights violations for certain gender groups, or other issues that could be seen as severe. So when we are talking about an identity being under threat, then that identity becomes prioritized in a way that it can identify another group or another agent as an enemy. And there we may have what we call in-group or out-group hostilities, or a perception that an out-group or members of a different community may pose a threat to our own identity. And essentially, it's important to break down these elements and understand these elements when we are looking at social mediation, because the purpose of mediated dialogue is to allow the mediator to look beyond the surface and try to see the issue not in its simplistic, superficial form, but essentially in the underlying threats that are there that need to be broken down. If we can go to the next slide, then I can proceed with that. Essentially, as I mentioned, social mediation is this process of repairing social bonds, and to do that, we are able to identify the perceived threat and break it down for the individuals so that the parties involved in the conflict will be able to feel empowered, see the bigger picture, have more empathy, and be able to draft their own settlement. So it's not about the mediator to understand what the conflict is about, but about the mediator to assist a conflict and the disputants in a conflict to move beyond the threats that they pose to each other and construct their own settlement. We can also move to the next slide. Therefore, and in conclusion, the objectives of a social mediation process is to engage the disputants in this way of allowing them to see beyond the surface of an issue, allowing them to see the underlying elements of threat and securitization that may be posing this sense of danger an imminent threat to one another. Try to see multiple perspectives of why this conflict occurred and essentially generate empathy. And essentially empower the disputants in drafting their own solution in ways that they wouldn't allow this conflict to escalate again. So the tool of the social mediator would be to empower individuals to truly and sustainably overcome what brought them in rivalry in the first place. I will conclude at this point, and I hope that I was able to provide a brief background of our practice before our next speakers continue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katerina. You're right on time. It was actually very clear, and I hope that we will get some questions that we can answer later on. For the moment, let's call on our next speaker to come. So, Pinar. Dr. Pinar Zubaroglu Ioannides is a senior visiting fellow at iClaim, and we are very happy to have her with us tonight. Pinar's expertise for us is very important, fundamental, and it is around social work. So Pinar will share with you some empirical findings around social mediation in COVID times. So Pinar, the floor is yours for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I would like to present the findings from a conference that we had last year when the pandemic was around. Last year in September 2020, we had a social mediation conference, and part of that conference included an interactive session that I led on COVID and its impact on social mediation in Cyprus. Some of you may know that Cyprus actually is a divided island nation that is divided to two communities. One is Turkish-speaking Cypriot community and the other one is Greek-speaking Cypriot community. These communities were divided after a violent conflict in 1974. And there were no crossing between these two communities. Let's say the crossing was extremely restricted until 2003, when the United Nations authorities and the leaders of two communities actually discussed to. I'm so sorry for the background noise. As you can see, COVID also impacts. We are working from home and there are kids around. So in 2003, after the UN related authorities and of course the leaders of two communities came together and they decided to open the crossing between the two communities, and there was a regular life. Two communities were going to visit each other, but unfortunately, when pandemic came, there wasn't the situation went back to its state to before 2003. So people weren't able to see each other or go to the other community where they may have family members, or they may be treated for their health problems. We wanted to, in our session, we wanted to actually understand what people feel as an impact of COVID on the social mediation, and also raise awareness of what possible alternative solutions could be among the people that we had in the conference. We actually had participants from two communities, from Turkish-speaking and Greek-speaking Cypriot communities. So our participants suggested that basically they actually talked about the consequences that are work-related, and the other topic was family and social life related consequence. So the work-related consequences were including that they couldn't visit the other, they couldn't actually work anymore. They lost their work. They had a fear of job insecurity. They had some people that were working in the other community had to stay in their community, and the people working in the other community had to take their jobs, which overloaded them if they were able to work. And family and social life related consequences included that, you know, they couldn't access their accommodation in the other community, and also they couldn't visit their family members in the other community. When we asked about the alternative solutions, the solutions were mostly work-related. They suggested that they should work from home, the possibilities should be open, basically, and they could transition the jobs, and then they could actually supervise the access. Some people suggested that if there is any health-related problem, individuals could take action on behalf of the affected. They could have supervision, like supervising individuals to go to the other community. And there was a particular solution that was suggested that was very important for us, which was having a unified lockdown measure. And actually, a few months after our sessions, with the support of UN authorities, of course, there was a unifying lockdown measure implemented. And since then, the two communities can cross regularly, in addition to some COVID-related measures, like they need to have PCR tests before passing. So this is my part for now. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Pinar, for sharing with us empirical findings of much interest. Let's go to our next speaker, Zora Kizilyurek. Zora is a senior intern at iClaim, and we were very happy to welcome her the whole of last year for an internship and also for a master degree at the university. And what we wanted to achieve with Zora is give the floor to a young person, younger than us, who benefited from social mediation training and is also a member of these communities that we are discussing. So Zora, the floor is yours for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. So, as Stephanie said, I took part in social mediation training and trained as a social mediator. And I would like to touch on 3 points briefly that I've learned in this experience. First of all, in the training, the first thing, I think the most important thing we learned is basically you're trained to learn certain techniques that can solve conflicts, which initially look like they're unsolvable. So being part of this course, you learn how to resolve social conflicts. For example, from a personal perspective, many times automatically we may think a conflict cannot be resolved. So that could be something as simple as two people supporting different football teams, so they've got different opinions, or it could be our personal experiences, such as with a family member, maybe a work colleague, maybe different views that different communities share over a certain conflict. So initially we take this view that, that is not possible, like we think differently, we can't solve this. However, even from a legal perspective, we constantly, we usually look for formal ways to resolve a conflict. We don't think that actually we can solve our conflicts, or in our community, conflicts of people around us. So we learned so many techniques that are simple, and that could be either learning how to empathize or understand and listen, as well as just putting your point across. So all these skills and techniques can be incorporated in our daily lives easily to resolve a conflict. And the second really nice thing about this training was the safe environment it provides for the participants to express their views. So even if there is a certain view that a participant holds, which is, on the topics of involve some sort of conflict, it gives the participant a safe environment to express their views and confront that around other participants. But at the same time, there are rules and there is a structure in place in this training where, it kind of prevents anything escalating. So I really appreciated this, because so many times conflicts occur because we can't talk about them, we can't really tell how we feel. Whereas in this training, you get a chance to talk to people and tell your views, and they have the same chance, which contributes to building empathy and understanding each other, which plays a big role in solving social conflicts. And finally, I would like to touch on how this training can help not only to solve individual or more in your community conflicts, but in a bigger scale, heal society in certain ways. So, for example, I can kind of say it teaches you how to fish rather than giving you the fish. So, as I said earlier, so many times in our environments, we look for solutions that are far, whereas in training, you can learn how to do this yourself. And this way, if so many people are trained, if young people like us are interested in this training, and then we can learn all these skills and we can just help our communities, our little groups, then in a larger scale, it can provide so many benefits to society as a whole, and we can take permanent steps to, we may say, solve some of the conflicts that occur in society as a whole. Thank you for listening. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Zora. Thank you for sharing, your views from testimonial of, how you have embraced our programs and how you have benefited from them. This is very important for us, and maybe we can expound in the Q&A, because we are doing well with time, actually. So let me now come to our next speaker, who is our colleague, Ms. Nadia Kornioti. Nadia is a research scholar at iClaim, and we are very proud to have Nadia with us. Nadia is also a PhD student at the university at UCLan Cyprus. Nadia, we are listening to you. Just let me know when you want me to turn the slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good evening, everybody from all across Europe, at least, if not the world. And thank you for joining us for this presentation. My task today is to give you a small glimpse of what we're trying to present in the workshops. It's going to be difficult to do without many people being in small groups. The group spirit is very important in the workshops, as Zora has just explained, but I promise I will try to do my best. So Stephanie, if you could please move on to the next slide. The workshops have been developed out of the handbook that Stephanie has previously mentioned, and it's basically a practical exercise into the theoretical background introduced through the handbook. Through the handbook, there is a clear division in social mediation on how it can be used in prevention, in resolution and rehabilitation situations. By prevention, we mean when as a trained social mediator in a group setting can feel that there is rising tension on a particular matter. The resolution state is when you bring two parties to a social conflict on the table with the social mediator to discuss what is bothering them, where they need to unpack the different aspects of the conflict and reach a solution on their own, but with the support of the social mediator. And the rehabilitation stage obviously comes at the end, where the social mediator cannot give up on their responsibility immediately once a resolution has been found, but rather they need to keep an eye and support the opposing teams or the opposing participants into making that settlement more stable, more concrete. The division, of course, in practice is not always so clear. There might be group oppositions with people within those groups having a very specific discussion that requires two individuals discussing with the social mediation. But these are unfortunately details I cannot get into for the limited time we have today. However, and Stephanie, we can move to the next slide. What I can present you, it's one of the scenarios we have been using in order to encourage participants to exchange their views on how they would have reacted in a given situation. So what we offer them is, after giving them the theoretical background, is a social mediation as a preventive toolbox. Where we give them ideas about different activities they can engage in, without, however, giving them too much information on how they can be used or in what type of situations they can be used. As you see on your screen, these include community and group activities, intercultural or interreligious activities, awareness-raising activities, training and empowerment, human rights education, as well as positive dialogue between the teams that need to understand the other person's perspective. As my colleague Katerina Antoniou has mentioned earlier, group identity is something we work with throughout. It's a very constant theme throughout the workshops, and I think participants really appreciate and really understand where this is going by the end of the training. So let's move on and look at the scenario briefly now. This is 1 out of 5 scenarios we have developed, and we give one scenario per group of person, and we allow people to sit together for like 20-25 minutes and discuss, and possible tools they can use from the toolbox I have just previously shown. In this scenario, it says you are teachers in a high school where during the previous academic year there was a serious homophobic incident. Students being bullied on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity by other students has been a recurring phenomenon in your school for years. Among your colleagues, there are some who fail to understand the importance of protecting LGBT+ rights. And what they need to do is for them to imagine they're in the beginning of the academic year and the director of the school has assigned you to come up with a preventive strategy. Now, at a first glance, the scenario is obviously very broad, and this is usually the reaction of participants as well when they start asking for clarifications on what exactly this sentence means, what do we know about this specific issue, and so on. This is done on purpose, of course, in order to initiate the discussion among the participants of the specific team. Here, obviously, on the one side, you can see the group of students that are being bullied and those who bully the students. Another opposition that you can come across are the teachers who are very familiar with LGBT issues, and those who are reluctant or unwilling to understand that this is actually a very serious type of bullying, and it's not something that should be neglected. And of course, in the middle, you have the director who is struggling in order to balance out all these opposing teams. The team members are asked to imagine not that they're the director, but that they're another teacher that is required to draw some preventive social mediation strategies. From the list, then, they are free to choose, and after they have had the discussion, obviously they come back into plenary and they present their ideas. There is no right recipe on which scenarios exactly, but as long as they are able to justify that, then there is a very lively discussion usually in the room, because somebody might say, you know, I wouldn't have thought of that, or somebody might say, you know, I don't really like this idea because I think it should be touching on other we should focus on something different, and so on. And this gives us the opportunity, and I conclude, to also understand how social mediation is perceived by participants and what gaps there are for potential future trainings, or what are the real worries of the participants. And the result is always very, very enriching for both participants and trainers. Now, any questions you may have, please feel free to raise, or any comments from my colleagues. And you can always contact us. And of course, the handbook, as Stephanie had said in the beginning, is available for you in a digital form on the website, but also in a PDF that you can freely download and make good use of. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nadia. We are doing excellent with time, and you know, thank you for sharing with us one of the scenarios, which is something that is you know, important for people to understand what we work with, what sort of social conflicts we work with. Now we have plenty of time for questions, actually, because we were very disciplined with time. I'm checking Slido and I can see no questions on Slido. I'm not sure whether questions can come in any different ways. So perhaps let me ask Katerina and Nadia first to tell us a bit more about the social mediation project and what we are currently doing with it, what activities we have forthcoming, what we are planning to do. So who wants to go first, Katerina or Nadia?
I can go ahead if that's okay with you, Nadia. One thing that we didn't mention is that the compilation of this information that goes under the social mediation initiative is something that started in 2018 with a series of consecutive trainings. And what we wanted to do is make this tool available to as many people as possible. Since we are Cyprus-based, we started with trainings that involved Cyprus-based individuals, active citizens that came from different organizations, or diversity of professional sectors, particularly with many coming from the educational and the police sector, where mediation and facilitated dialogue is a quite needed tool. And we have today grown with having completed a number of, I think, more than 10 trainings to establish a social mediators network that engages not only with Cyprus-based individuals, but also with other individuals from Europe and social mediators based in the UK and internationally. What we want to do with the network is essentially have a network of individuals that are familiar with the tool of social mediation, to collaborate and be able to communicate in order to collectively see how this tool of social mediation can be applied in different areas of community crisis, in different types of community conflict, or whether it is possible to pursue using social mediation as a complementary tool for larger scale conflicts.
Thank you very much, Katerina. Nadia, do you want to add something perhaps on the network or past activities?
Yes, absolutely, because this is a very exciting time for the project, I must say. The project is compatible with a series of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So we have been looking to develop it into that direction. And because of the flexibility it offers, we had been able to adapt it to different themes. One of the themes that has been there has been a lot of interest in has been the theme of youth. And we have just received funding to make a new workshop series specializing on the issues of culture and cultural identity. And we're just finalizing another manual. Projects usually come with manuals associated with the different themes of each project. And we are currently completing a manual on social mediation and transitions. It has been completely inspired by the COVID-19 pandemic on how big social developments and how we live in a time where transitions are happening all the time, whether due to, and transitions will be happening in the future. For example, if we consider the environmental situation around the globe, and how this can help us reflect better, how social mediation can help us reflect better on how our identities, our perceptions, and our prejudices change over time. So there is a lot of new information coming in, and we are very excited to be able to share from this forum today, but also in the future with a broader audience. The only thing I would like to add to what Katerina said about the network is that it has already rather a global coverage, a very broad geographical coverage within Europe and beyond Europe. So we are really looking forward to enriching that with the experience of social mediators from different parts of the world, because obviously we all share similarities, but also difficulties that are unique to our own social situation, like the one described by Pinar earlier, and this dialogue that social mediation opens up to is always very helpful in making us look at old problems with new eyes, let's say.
Thank you very much, Nadia. Let me turn to Pinar and Zora now and ask Pinar and Zora, in whatever order they want to answer, what is their plan with respect to social mediation, whether this is something they truly believe that they can use in their own communities, in their own work environment, and whether they could share good practice with us.
I can answer first if Pinar doesn't mind. Yeah, I think Nadia was kind of briefly touched on it. One thing I really liked about this training is that there is a network for social mediators where you can stay in touch and there are ongoing activities. So the training we received just doesn't end there. We stay connected to people who are also trained and who are also interested in this training, like all the participants. And I think this also provides an opportunity for all of us to constantly learn from each other over the time, and maybe kind of build common practices and share experiences of how maybe if one person used social mediation to resolve a conflict and how I use that to resolve the training to resolve a conflict. So I think one thing I would like to take from this experience is to kind of carry on with the network, social mediators network, and build and over time apply these skills more in the conflicts obviously I face, either personally or more in a work environment. So yeah, that's one thing I can definitely add. Thank
you very much, Zora. Pinar, would you like to give us your vision of things, because you are a very experienced researcher? So
I actually, after participating in the trainings, I thought that I should make this part of my work, and I came up with a project idea, which I haven't, applied for any funding or anything yet. But I thought that children especially like middle school children, like children of, I don't know, 13 or 12 years old, should actually start learning these skills to apply at a young age, starting from young age, and hopefully develop those skills throughout their life. So now I am in the process of really writing such a project, so we can maybe apply in Cyprus, in schools in Cyprus, in 2 communities, hopefully. So maybe there will be some other real effects that we can see later on.
Thank you very much, Pinar. Let me then give a few final thoughts. I am happy to listen to the way the social mediation journey has had multiplying effects in various directions, whether it's in private life, whether it's in social life, whether it's at the workplace, whether it's research oriented. So this is exactly what we try to achieve. We try to achieve better understanding of each other, mutual learning, and of course, mutual respect. So in terms of the many spillover effects that this project can have, I just wanted to remind everyone that you can go to this resource that is currently broadcasted on the screen, the social mediation website, where not only will you learn more about iClaim and UCLAN, that has been working with us on this project, but on top of that, you'll be able to learn to actually read the handbook in an interactive manner, and look at the activities that we have done to date. You will be surprised to see the diversity of the activities that we have had to date, and the diversity of the participants as well. So this is something that social mediation is very proud of, the fact that, we actually foster diversity. Just tonight in our panel, there is a lot of diversity. And we have collected resources worldwide on social mediation, because social mediation is a widely used tool in some jurisdictions, in some countries, in some cultures that sometimes have very little to do with each other. But nevertheless, they all use some sort of version of social mediation, which is something which is very encouraging for us. And finally, we would like to invite anyone who is interested not only to get in contact with us, but to come up with ways that you propose to implement or apply social mediation in your own social challenges, in your own social projects, and in your own ways to resolve or at least address these projects. So this is very important, and we would be very happy to hear from everyone, because social mediation actually fits as a tool in any approach to solving social tensions and any methodology. So with this, I will stop sharing my screen, and I will thank very much my colleagues, all my colleagues who were here tonight. And just remind everyone that, we are very happy to have been able to engage with FRA, through FRA, and other stakeholders in this Human Rights Forum, which we found very fascinating. So we'd like to thank FRA and the people who have supported us to deliver this session. And finally, would like to ask anyone who has taken the time to listen to us And we hope that you get in touch with us if you can. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
You
you.
take care.
Thank you.
Bye.